Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our review of the Champions League round of 16 second legs, in which Atletico Madrid were left feeling sick after a controversial double penalty kick. Liverpool had a dream they can't fulfill after PSG made things plus difficile. Barcelona are still living the dream thanks in part to that young man Lamine, and Bayern just keep on producing after taking out their rivals, Bayer Leverkusen. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor Rockwell.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. Thank you for that lovely introduction as always. Thank you for being here in your New York City hotel room where the walls are thin, and we might hear people screaming at Ryan for being too loud on his recording. We'll see how excited he gets. I can't wait.
Yeah, I apologise if you do hear any background like, hey, I'm sleeping here. That kind of thing is what I imagine will come through on the mic.
It's going to be like the start of that Michael Jackson track on the door. Dun, 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 dun. Eat this.
It could be. Indeed. Graham Ruffin, how are you?
I'm very well, Ryan Bailey. I was kind of hoping you'd be staying in the same room that you stayed in for the World Cup and you could give us an update on how the hole in the floor is.
It's all disappeared now, Graham. It's all in a vortex somewhere. It's just gone. The whole place. The hole in the floor swallowed it. But it's good to be back on the feed, guys. I have missed you. I didn't get my US player portmanteau name. I'm disappointed, like Diojo and Greem did earlier in the week.
Can you tell that I came up with that 5 seconds before we hit record?
How about this? Brian McBride?
I mean, that's a name, certainly. Is that a portmanteau if it's just another person's name?
That it deserved.
It's got Ryan in it. Brian's the Starbucks name. That's it.
Yeah. Did you also think of that 5 seconds before we started recording?
3 seconds. Yeah.
Gio Reyna?
Oh, that was better.
That was better. Yeah.
It wasn't good. It was better. I'll take that. That's fine.
All right, well, let's keep that as the mantra going forward in this here show. Before we get there, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is the best way to support this here endeavour. Bonus episodes, bonus video, and access to our Discord server where all the cool kids are hanging out. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Thank you to everybody who supports us via that medium. All right, Taylor, why don't we get kicking off with the Champions League action? We'll go to Anfield first, where PSG got a 1-0 win. It was 1-1 on aggregate, PSG and Liverpool. PSG going through, of course, 4-1 on penalties. This was, Taylor, I thought, great game of soccer, great PSG side. Liverpool better than they were in the first leg, but obviously not good enough.
Yeah, I think that is the fair summary of this game and of this fixture. I thought PSG rose to the occasion. I did not fully think they would be able to get a result at Anfield, or I certainly thought it was going to be an ask for them, but they came out. I felt like they were the more dominant team in the first half. I think Liverpool did make some adjustments and things kind of settled into parity as the game went on, and as we got into extra time, it did feel like we were moving towards the why do we do this? Why don't we just go straight to penalties? Though Alisson does have the full stretch save in the 109th minute to keep Liverpool in this one. But overall, I feel like I come away from this one thinking Liverpool is still an excellent team that I fully expect to win the Premier League, and I think could have gone even deeper in this competition. It's just that they came up against a very strong PSG team, a very disciplined and well-coached PSG team. Luis Enrique losing his mind in this game. Between him and Diego Simeone, I don't know if either one could actually speak in their post-match presser. I did not watch to see if that was the case, but I thought this was another sort of feather in Luis Enrique's cap for how PSG played and responded to the first leg.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, Taylor. And it's just great to see a team of his be a reflection of him as a coach. And I think these two games against Liverpool, who I think are probably on this basis still up there as one of the best teams in Europe. I thought that these are the two best teams in Europe right now. They've just obviously been paired together earlier in the Champions League than would normally be the case. But what we have now is an actual Lucho team where you have that control of the midfield, you have the aggression out of possession. But also, if you think back to his Barcelona team, his great Barcelona team, you've got that dynamism, you've got that directness in the attacking third, which his Spain team never had. And I know we sort of criticised Lucho for that Spain team towards the end, but I think if you look at the players that Spain have now, with Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams, he never had those players. Whereas at PSG now, with Dembele and Barcola and Kvaradona and Desiree Doué, who's an excellent player, comes off the bench in this game, he's got those players, they've got the approach. And I think on this basis, it wouldn't surprise me at all if PSG go and do the thing finally and win the Champions League.
Likeability-ometer, Graham, on PSG, has it gone up in the past week once more?
Oh, for sure. Like, this is a team that I mean, the base level, the bar for PSG was so low on a work ethic, in a work ethic sense, that having a team that just runs around and presses and counter presses, but also does it effectively, is an improvement on what we've seen in PSG in the past. I also think Luis Enrique is a really likeable guy and has overcome some personal tragedy and personal adversity in the last few years. So to see a team of his thriving, he's one of my favourites, Lucho, and so I'm just really pleased that we're watching this team at this moment.
Yeah. I would echo that with Luis Enrique. I would echo that with this PSG team. I continue to love the little guy midfield where they have 3 and 4 midfielders who are all like under 5'1", I think. That's an exaggeration, but you get my idea. But then to Graham's point, I do think any amount of running and pressing and defending would be an upgrade over what we've seen from them in seasons past. But this is a team that works much harder as a collective unit, but then I think also much harder individually. I think of somebody like Achraf Hakimi, who has always been an exceptionally talented player, even if Real Madrid didn't think so fully. But in this game, I think we saw him when he is well coached and when he is truly up for it. And I think also maybe when he considers himself to be a marquee name. I think in PSG teams of the past, certainly involved in the attack, but I think sort of reflected the energy and vibes around him. There's a moment in the, I believe, 58th, it might have been the 68th, I can't really read my handwriting, where I think it's a PSG corner, they lose possession, Liverpool counterattack. Hakimi sprints 90 yards, I want to say, to be in a position. It's the one where Luis Diaz is played in and kind of has to like dribble and cut back and then try to find a pass. And it's just because Hakimi pursues him all the way into the box, closes him down, recognizes that he is wide open, gets there, but then has really good defensive ability to not overcommit, to not dive in, to not just go flying in and try to make a challenge, but sprint back and then immediately be in just kind of good 1v1 defending so that Luis Diaz can't really do anything and ends up, I think, coughing the ball up. Hakimi wins the ball, and then I think there's a foul after that. But that level of energy, that level of work ethic, I think was the difference in a very tightly contested game.
I like it when players prove people wrong and prove me wrong. There are two other examples of that, Taylor. The best example is Ousmane Dembele, who I've been on the show in the past saying he's just not it. He's not going to have the consistency. Clearly, he has the talent, but he's not going to find his potential. Well, he's making me humble pie at the moment because he has been incredible the last couple of months, and not just in terms of his output, but the way that Lucho is using him, the way that he's performing that central forward role, really intelligent stuff where he's dropping deep and he does it for actually it might be Barcola that does it for the goal, but we saw Dembele do it as well where PSG were going central into that sort of withdrawn false 9 position, and then he would get turned and all of a sudden he's driving at, and Van Dijk and Konate, they're two defenders. They're brilliant when they can get contact against the striker. They want that physical battle. Well, Dembele wasn't giving them that opportunity, and so he has become such a leader as well in this PSG team where there was a leadership vacuum after Messi and Mbappe and Neymar. And Dembele, for all his previous faults and questions about his work rate and his attitude, which at the start of this season he was banished from first team training by Lucho for a couple of weeks, he's proven people wrong. Another player, Nuno Mendes, who was previously criticised for being poor defensively, there was a rough sort of 10 minutes at the start of this match where Salah had more opportunities in those 10 minutes than he did in the entire first leg. After that, Nuno Mendes really steadied himself, and actually Salah got no change out of him for the rest of the match. So I don't know whether it's probably a combination of a number of things. It's probably a better environment at that club. It's probably good coaching, but the end result is you've got players who are showing their full potential.
Yeah, I think showing their full potential, but then also showing true focus on what matters in game. Because as the first half goes on, I think Liverpool felt like there were some calls that should have gone their way. I think that there were some maybe fouls that weren't given against PSG for Liverpool. And I think Liverpool responded by getting more physical, as I think you should. If a ref is going to let stuff go, if he's going to let things be a bit more aggressive, a bit more contacty, then you have to respond to that. And I think Liverpool started to knock PSG and started to go in hard. And I think PSG teams of the past respond to that in the way that Liverpool want them to. I think they start getting taken out of their game and they start complaining to the ref and they start jawing at Liverpool players. And that is part of why you make things physical, is because if your opponent is complaining to the ref and complaining about injustices and yelling at you and then maybe starting to fight with each other, they lose some of that focus you have to have. And for a team like PSG, if they go from 100% focus to 90% focus, a team like Liverpool, with the talent and ability they have, can capitalize on that 10% difference. PSG instead got physical themselves. Kvara has a couple kind of reducers that don't end up getting booked but do get called. And I think there was an okayness with this match becoming physical, and I think PSG did not back down from the physicality. They also didn't back down from the technical and from the pressing and from the running and from the work. And so in the end, I think it's a strong performance from Liverpool and just a marginally stronger performance from PSG.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is a sign of the times at PSG, Taylor. With someone like Kvaradona, ostensibly one of the stars of this team, the way he was tracking back and putting in some of those producers, he was all over the field. There were some previous PSG players who wouldn't have been anywhere near the defensive third in some of the instances where he was getting back. So
what do you mean? Who could you possibly be referring to? Certainly not an entire front three. Definitely not that.
Yeah, so very positive steps. A very mature PSG side we have who are difficult to break down and will likely go far in this contest. They've got Aston Villa coming up next. Graham, one more note on this game, maybe on Liverpool. Are we worried at all about them fizzling out this season? Obviously, they've got a big cup competition in the League Cup coming this weekend. They're it's going to take a lot for them not to win the Premier League, but they're not exactly bulletproof right now, it's fair to say.
We have seen this in the past with Liverpool, right? Last season it happened in Klopp's final season when they were fighting on four fronts and they did kind of fizzle out last season. I mean, am I worried about Liverpool? No, I still think they are an exceptional team. There's very little between them and PSG, and maybe we're putting Bayern into that category as well as the best teams in Europe at the moment. Barcelona, of course, probably belong in that category as well. I think in this match they came up against a team that could expose their weaknesses in a few areas with the way that PSG, the way that they attack open space. I said this last week, not to give myself too much credit, but I had a feeling that maybe the Anfield second leg would get more out of the PSG attack, where there would be a little bit more space for them to play into, and I think that kind of that panned out. Obviously, with PSG winning this tie, but they're still an exceptional team. I think on another night, Liverpool maybe put away a couple of those chances in the second half. I thought a lot of their attacking play was quite ragged. It was just things like passes that were a yard behind a player or someone needing 2 touches to control a ball rather than 1. Luis Diaz, I thought, was quite bad for that. Salah was clearly off the pace in the 2 matches that he played against PSG, which has not been normal for him this season. This is probably the season of his entire career. So on another night, maybe Liverpool get through this game. Go on, Taylor.
I just wanted to say, maybe I'm going way too far with this, but there's the collision, head-to-head collision with Vitinha in the first half, where Vitinha gets a cut. I think by the end of the game, Salah has like a visible knot on his head, and I don't think he was concussed, but I do just wonder if there's kind of a head-to-head blow, and then he stays in it. I do wonder if that was maybe partially why he didn't just look his sharpest when he takes his. Does he take a penalty? Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong penalty diagram. He takes the first one and buries it. But just when he stepped up, there was just a vibe around him of like you see him usually a lot more switched on and a lot more focused, and it felt like he was just a little bit glassier-eyed, and that stood out to me after that head injury. So who knows? But one thing I wanted to note there.
So Kim McCauley had some good numbers on Blue Sky about Liverpool shooting over the 2 legs, and basically they were having the same number of shots as they would normally have, but the XG per shot was much lower than their season average. So that kind of backs up what I was saying, just in an attacking sense. A little bit ragged, maybe not playing their best ball, but I'm not worried about Liverpool. They're still an incredible team.
But on the same side of that coin, Graham, we give PSG flowers for their how stable they were at the back as well. I feel like Liverpool had 1 billion corners in this game, and you never felt like they were at danger of any of them, even with their Sabrina Carpenter-sized midfield.
Yeah, and that's a good way to describe it. Defensively, we've obviously highlighted over the 2 legs Dembele and Kvaratskhelia, Neves and Vitinha, the aforementioned Sabrina Carpenter-sized midfield. I just want to make sure we give William Pacho his flowers, because he is maybe not someone we would immediately put at the top of list of PSG stars, but over the 2 legs, he won every header and made every clearance and was basically a brick wall. And it's refreshing that PSG have a centre-back who just does the defensive basics really well. I think Marquinhos alongside him is maybe a little bit more rounded in terms of his technical ability, but Pacho was great over the 2 legs.
Excellent stuff. All right, let's take a quick break. Taylor teased moments ago that he's got more than one penalty diagram. I'm sure we'll be discussing that very shortly when we go to Madrid. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Champions League review. Let's go to the Metropolitano, where Atletico Madrid had a 1-0 win over their neighbours Real. 1-1 on aggregate. Real Madrid winning on penalties 4-2. A heartbreaking exit for Atleti this was. A very highly controversial exit, I think we could probably say as well. A disallowed double kick penalty. The rarely seen double kick penalty from Julian Alvarez.
I still haven't seen it, in fact. I'll go that far with it. I mean, I have seen the double touch. I've definitely seen where his plant foot, just as he is striking it, the plant foot slightly turns, and I think there is contact first with the plant foot toe before he kicks it. But that is the thing, man. Even in the reverse angle, slowed down frame by frame, it is still maybe, but I do not think it was anywhere nearly as decisive, and that's where we then learn that it's an automated or semi-automated decision, less so a thing that the camera spotted and made clear.
Yeah, I'm not exaggerating. I think I've watched this about 30 times and slowed down frame by frame, and I think you're probably right, Taylor. I think it probably is a double touch. I don't know for certain, because the way that the camera angle is, it's on the other side of the ball, or at least one of the clearest camera angle is from the other side of the ball to his foot. So you can kind of see it for a split second, the ball pops up a little bit. That could be his standing foot on the grass, with the force of a standing foot on the grass making the ball come up a little bit. So there's no conclusive evidence that that's a double touch.
Not at all. That's a thing that I believe Ronaldo, I can't remember if it's original Ronaldo or Cristiano Ronaldo, used to do, was basically stamp the foot down to get a little pop on the ball to then make it have a strange spin. And it always looked really odd to goalkeepers and would make them kind of fidget for a moment, and he could utilize that as well. So it's definitely a thing that can happen. I do wonder if the pitch was partially responsible, because we have the Vinicius missed penalty as well. Yeah. And slowing it down and watching that one, his plant foot is a good foot ahead of the ball, which is not where you want it to be when you're shooting, which is why he has to kind of reach behind him when he's kicking it. And I think he actually kicks it into the ground first, and then it goes way over the goal. And in this one, you have the kind of slip of the plant foot that leads to the double touch. I think the same goes for Llorente. He doesn't slip, but I think he has just an awkwardness in his plant foot. So I wonder if the pitch itself was maybe just not even uneven, but just came up more readily, and so players were psychologically aware of it as they were taking their pens.
Yeah, and even if if it is a double touch, I would say that law needs revised. Yeah, because Alvarez doesn't get any advantage from it. No player is trying to get an advantage from a double touch. It's a disadvantage to do that, and I just think common sense says that's a retake. I know if it's a double. Go on.
Would it be if you, in case you teed it up for yourself, lift it up with your right foot and then volleyed it in? It's to stop that, right? That's what it's for.
Well, I mean, I've never seen a player try that, but
I think it's because in indoor you can dribble in the penalty and kind of go 1v1 the old NASL style. Yeah. So I'm assuming it's partially to stop you from trying to kind of dribble in on goal or make something like that happen. And then I think it's also probably more likely to stop you from, if it comes off the post or off the bar and goes back to you, someone else has to touch it first. And we do see that from time to time, where if it comes off the post and goes back to the taker and then they score, goal is disallowed because it's a second touch. No one has touched it previously. This just feels like way too aggressive of policing, and again, from a semi-automated system.
It's one of those things where the laws of the game, it feels like the laws of the game get in the way of common sense, right? Because would anyone really, I mean, we're talking about Real Madrid here, I guess, but the level-headed people, the normal people, wouldn't have had an issue with that penalty being retaken, because it's Alvarez has put it in the back of the net. So from Real Madrid's point of view, Courtois getting another opportunity to save it by having the retake. So yeah, not ideal. And another quick point on this. I know we're going long on this, but I know Christina Unkel said something on the CBS broadcast about them using a sensor or some sort of snickometer that could detect frequency.
There's no sensor, as far as I understand it. They used a semi-automated system, which is why none of the replays made it clear. Because normally, if you're using a replay system with 400 cameras, you can see it really, really clearly. In this case, we didn't really get that.
So that's confusing, Taylor, just because Miguel Delaney had a statement from after the game where they said they went on VAR. So I don't know who is. There seems to be a lot of mixed messages here, but I didn't like it.
Yeah, nope. Ultimately VAR should be when there's a clear error, right? And this was not an instance of a clear error. It was so marginal, and I think you're quite right, Graham. The ground could have moved from his standing foot. Graham, I'm sure you were thinking of Euro 96, the England-Scotland game, and Gary McAllister, the ball rolling a couple of inches forward before he hit it, probably because of what. Maybe it was him again. Uri Geller did it, rather than McAllister's standing foot or the wind or something like that. But very, very sad way for Atleti to go out. In terms of the game itself, Conor Gallagher scoring after just 28 seconds, the fastest ever goal scored by an Englishman in the history of the UEFA Champions League. Congrats to Conor Gallagher there. I think, I will not give myself too much credit, but I think I said last week something along the lines of Atleti will go up early and bunker down and sit on it. And yeah, that's kind of, Graham, what happened, right?
Most of the time when you get a goal that early in a game, in a big consequential Champions League match, you think, here we go, we're about to get a banger. As soon as that goal goes in after 30 seconds, I'm thinking to myself, oh no, Atleti are going Atleti the heck out of this match. And that's exactly what happened. I thought it was a pretty similar sort of match to the one that we got in the first leg. Obviously we get that fast start by Atleti, and for that goal they get forward at speed, and they have Simeone in the box, they have Gallagher in the box, they have Rodrigo de Paul getting forward to provide the service. We didn't really see another moment like that from Atleti, and that has been the criticism of Atletico Madrid for a long time. Was the opportunity there when they had their tails up early in this game to really put the foot on the throat of Real Madrid? Because there were moments in this game where they were really rattled. I thought Lucas Vazquez, when he comes on in this game, was pretty poor at right back. Was there an opportunity for Atleti to drive at him a little bit more? And look, this is just the way that Atleti are under Diego Simeone. They're never really going to change, and they are masters of controlling games without having the ball. And they did a lot of that here. Real Madrid's possession play throughout this match was coming to a halt in the final third. They were having a lot of that U-shaped possession. What is it that Joe calls it? The U-shape of doom or sadness or something like that.
The horseshoe of despair. Horseshoe of sadness,
there we go.
I think, yeah.
That was Real Madrid's performance for a lot of this match. And that was down to Atleti sitting deep and narrow and making Real Madrid play around them. So there's a purpose to why they play like this. But Atleti still needed a second goal in this game. They were playing for a lot of this match like they were leading. And ultimately, they've paid for it with a sixth successive penalty shootout defeat to Real Madrid. And they have now gone out of the Champions League to Real Madrid in the final, the semi-finals, the quarter-finals, and the last 16 now. So it's a real hoodoo.
Bill Simmons, when he used to still write things, would write about how, like at Fenway with the Red Sox, you could tell when the crowd knew a player was starting a slump. You could tell the crowd knew when something was going wrong just by the way there was just a change in the energy. And I thought that was really sort of palpable last night in this game, where the Atleti faithful were so loud for the entirety of this game. The atmosphere was incredible, the way the players were always picking that crowd up. Maybe it's just the way the director would cut to people, but it felt like we cut from a lot of vamos and everybody going nuts to just increased nerves and anxiety and fear almost in the crowd. And that's as the game goes on, which is normal when it's a really tightly contested affair. But I do think there were moments in this game where it felt like Atleti had the momentum, Madrid had their backs against the wall, were sort of rattled, were sort of unprepared for the energy and the intensity of this game. And I think Atleti didn't take their chances, to Graham's point, and I think didn't push on for that second one. I think it was there. I think as the game goes on, there starts to be a feeling of oh no, is this going to happen again? Oh, this is going to happen again. Oh no, we haven't taken our chances. Oh no, oh no. And once you're going into a shootout with oh no as your overall energy, I think it's hard to kind of pull that back. And Real Madrid, by comparison, looked pretty calm and pretty composed, taking their penalties, except for Lucas Vazquez, who hits maybe the worst penalty of any of the shootouts, and that's including the double touch from Alvarez and the miss from
Rudiger,
Llorente.
maybe as well, which was I think Oblak will be having sleepless nights about that because it's not great goalkeeping.
Yeah, it happens with Courtois on Correa's as well, right? He's full stretch and gets a hand to it and seems like he kept it out, but then it goes in. And then for Rudiger's, yeah, you can see in the slow-mo replay of Rudiger where he thinks for a moment it's been saved and he has let the whole team down. And then he has to do the oh, never in doubt, always cool. I always knew it was going in. But yeah, for a minute there, I thought, wow, Rudiger found a way to not kill this game off. Well done to Oblak. But in the end, it goes the other way around.
Hey, Taylor, do you want to hear my Atleti conspiracy theory?
Yes, please.
One. Okay, so Diego Simeone after the game, his quote, very humble sounding was Simeone. He didn't seem very angry. He said, "I'm happy. Honestly, I'm happy. Why? Because we competed in a way that was exemplary. We might not have been able to beat Real Madrid in the Champions League, sure, but they had a bad time of it every time. They will remember us for a long time. Our people leave with the pain of having been knocked out, of course, but knowing that their team gave everything. I go in peace, losing, but in peace." This doesn't sound like textbook Simeone post-match commentary to me. And what it tells me, Taylor, is that Simeone is sitting there thinking, I replaced the turf in the penalty areas with Jello to try and get the advantage for Atletico Madrid, and it backfired on me. So I will be humble in the post-match. There you go.
I like that reading a lot, and I think that is definitely the primary reading. I would say maybe the secondary reading, in addition to yours, could be that they are 1 point behind Barcelona and Real Madrid in a title race, and blowing up in the postgame about how his team let him down and how they didn't do enough and how now the season is lost is maybe not the energy you want going into a title race.
I don't know. That quote, Ryan, it terrifies me more. Somehow, like... What's he
planning something? Yeah, exactly.
Giuliano was being held captive until he said nice things about the team, and so that's what he went with.
There was
go ahead, Graham.
I was just going to say a very, very quick thing, inconsequential, trivial thing, but there was a moment in this game where Giuliano Simeone won a corner kick. Athletic came from like a long kick forward, and Simeone wins a corner kick, and in sync. Both him and his dad, because you could see with the camera behind them, both of them to the crowd at the same time. I was like, yep, definitely related. Both Simeones.
One more point on this game and one question for you both. The point would be Real Madrid are in a slightly precarious position because Mendy seems to do his hamstring in this game, Ferland Mendy, the left back. So will he be able to play going forward would be a concern. Tchouaméni gets a yellow card, so he will be suspended for the next leg. And then I heard on the broadcast that Carlo Ancelotti would also be suspended for the next leg, but I didn't see him get a yellow. I don't see that in the match report, so maybe that was just erroneous reporting. But they are in a little bit of a tricky position on that front. The other question I have for you both, because I had this asked of me and I don't really have a good answer because I haven't read the penalty rules recently. The penalty that Vinicius misses, should that not have been a red card? I'm very confused by this. I think it's Longley pulls down... Yeah, he pulls down Mbappe, who is clean in on goal. It's in the penalty area. So I understand that the rule is if that had been outside the penalty area, you're denying a goal scoring opportunity, so it's a red card. You don't want to do double punishment, so you then give a yellow card on the penalty. But to my understanding, that's only when there is a deliberate play on the ball. And if you are just straight up tackling a guy, I don't think you're making a play on the ball at that point. So to me, I feel like we've seen that in the past given as a red for a player not making a play on the ball but making a play on the player. So do either of you have thoughts on why that wasn't a red card and a penalty?
Not really, just because I guess it's sort of subjective to a point. I would agree with you, Taylor. It feels like doesn't make a play on the ball in that moment, and so probably should be a red card. But yeah, I guess that's the referee's opinion. But
yeah,
maybe I'd like to go away with one there and then got the karmic... the karmic retribution in the shootout with the Alvarez thing.
Yeah, indeed. It does seem like one of those grey areas, I suppose, Teddy. You're quite right with the point you made there, but I'll add that I don't know the rules of soccer anymore, so I don't really know.
Truthfully, dude, that's where I am with it, is like in the last 12 months, maybe they got rid of that rule. Maybe it's just, nope, any penalty in the box that could be a red card is a yellow card. We don't care about anything anymore.
All right, wonderful stuff. Well, Real Madrid will play Arsenal in the next round. Arsenal of 9 goals scoring fame in this round. We'll get to them very shortly. Before we take a break, why don't we go to Barcelona with a 3-1 win over Benfica, a 4-1 win on aggregate. Rafinha with a brace here, and Lamine Yamal stepping up once again as the star with a goal and an assist. Very nice goal indeed. Taylor, the curl on that Lamine Yamal shot is just incredible. There's a few different angles of it. It's just to be able to fight off a couple of defenders and curl a shot off like that. This is a sincere question. Was Messi this good when he was 17?
Wow. That is an interesting question. When did he first break through? How old was he?
So he was, 16, 17 when he started playing as well?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Not quite as young as Lamine Yamal, I don't think.
I don't know. It's a really awkward one. I think Yamal has done more at this point in his career, certainly with his successes with Spain. But I also think like when Messi comes through, he is a really exciting player. To my memory, he's a very exciting player in a team that has other kind of superstars around him. And then he kind of rises in the estimations and quickly becomes the leader, the central figure of that team. Lamine Yamal has maybe been in that conversation for Barcelona, which is maybe more so a statement about the financial and roster build situation of Barcelona. But I don't know, man. The way he plays, the way he sees the game, the way he can handle physicality but still find ways of like sublime, beautiful performances. I don't think we've seen a player like it at that young of an age. I know Joe doesn't really rate him. I know Joe has long said that Yamal is not that good of a player. I just want to go on record as saying that I disagree with Joe. I think Lamine Yamal is pretty good.
He gets in Pedri's way too much is the problem for Joe,
That's what Joe always says, yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Graham, also, obviously, Rafinha having a great game here. Is there a phrase that Rio Ferdinand should be saying repeatedly towards Rafinha? What do you think?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, there was I'm sure it was in The Athletic, an article about this last week about how Rafinha, in terms of his output should be up there. I think in terms of his goal contributions this season, there's only like 3 players that are ahead of him in Europe, which is incredible. I can't recall a player who has had such a stark turnaround from one season to the next, where Barcelona wanting to get rid of him. He was written off as a flop. He was Barcelona's Antony last season. This season, he's a legitimate Ballon d'Or contender. But I just can't help myself, Taylor. Take every opportunity that I can get. The point I was going to make, or the point this article was making in The Athletic, was maybe he just doesn't have that name recognition that's been built up over a number of seasons. So maybe Salah, if people think, okay, this year is his year because of not just what he's done this in 2025 or what he will do in 2025, but what he's done over the last number of years, almost like an accumulative thing, whereas Rafinha doesn't really have that. But in terms of his output right now, yeah, he's absolutely up there. He is such an incredible long-range shooter, or not even a long-range shooter, but a shooter from like the edge of the box. I don't think there's anyone better in European football right now than Rafinha at doing that. Lamine Yamal's not bad at that either. But I thought this was a match where the midfield really won this game for Barcelona. I thought that midfield unit of De Jong, Pedri and Olmo, they're just so good in terms of their movement, how they all take it in terms to be the deep-lying playmaker, and their positional rotations are really good as well, and that just makes it so difficult for opposition teams to track them. I know Joe and I disagree a little bit on Frenkie de Jong. I think he's brilliant, and I think this game was such a good demonstration of what he offers you, with the way that he was carrying the ball forward. He's one of the few midfielders who can in an instant beat like 3 opposition players with a couple of ball movements, and he was doing that a lot in this game. And then we all know what Pedri offers, who I know Joe is a big fan of, but this season I think he's improved a lot in a defensive sense, and there were a couple times in this game where he stopped a counter-attack with a tackle or a block, and that's what I mean by that midfield 3. They all positionally interchange, where maybe Pedri's the deepest line one, maybe he's making a tackle, maybe it's De Jong, maybe it's someone carrying the ball, Olmo carrying the ball, maybe it's someone playing a different, playing a pass over the top. So yeah, they were very impressive in this game, Barcelona.
They were indeed. As a house cleaner begins vacuuming around my feet, apparently. Apologies if you can hear that one. But this win also an emotional one for Barcelona. It was dedicated to the club doctor, Carlos Miñaro, who died at the weekend. Their league game was postponed at the weekend, of course. He will be supporting us wherever he is. It is very important for us to win this game for him, said Hansi Flick of this victory. So, yeah, a bit more context for this victory as well. Barcelona will play Borussia Dortmund in the next round. We'll talk about them and many other games when we come back after this break. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Champions League roundup. Let's go to Leverkusen, who suffered a 2-0 defeat at the hands of Bayern Munich, 5-0 on aggregate. Bayern go through, of course, Harry Kane and Alphonso Davies with the goals here. Kane with the assist for Davies as well. That was Harry Kane's 10th Champions League goal this season, more than any other English player has scored in a single campaign in the competition's history. Thanks, Opta. Graham, anything to say about this?
Also, thanks those extra 2 games from the league phase that they've introduced for this season. It feels like those goal-scoring statistics are tumbling this season, and that's the reason why.
There's that too, Graham. But thoughts on Bayern and their progress in this contest?
Yeah, I mean, last week we had a discussion about whether Alonso got his approach wrong with no designated striker. This time, I thought, as simplistic as this may sound, I just thought Bayern were better. They controlled the majority of the match. Leverkusen had some moments, but lacked a bit of creativity. Last week they didn't have the striker. This week they didn't have Florian Wirtz, who was out injured for this match. Certainly didn't help that Leverkusen, I think of the 5 goals they conceded in this tie, 4 of them were from mistakes. Not entirely sure what Patrick Schick is doing for the first goal, where he just freezes and doesn't get on the end of that ball into the middle, and then Kane kind of prods it home. But on the balance of how the 2 matches went, I don't think Leverkusen can really have any real complaints. And the real consequential thing for them is you have to wonder if this is, I know Leverkusen are still in the DFB Pokal, but you have to wonder if in effect this is the end of the Xabi Alonso era for this team.
I think I want to be a little more critical of Xabi Alonso for a moment, because I think he gets it wrong in that first game, and then, as I mentioned this past weekend, he tries to rotate his team for Werder Bremen because he has an eye still on the Champions League, and then things don't go well for them. They're down 1-0 really, really quickly. It finishes 2-0. We talked about it on the weekend review as being one of several games where coaches tried to rotate players and then had to bring on starters. And that's exactly what happens here. And it's Florian Wirtz coming on at halftime and then getting injured 13 minutes later that keeps him out of this return leg against Bayern. And I think the combination of Florian Wirtz not being able to go because of that injury, with the way he got it wrong in the first leg, with even some of the rotations in this game, and I think just Leverkusen not looking as switched on, not looking as 100% locked in the way we've seen them at other points in this season and last, I do think was a massive difference maker. Certainly when you're 3-0 down after the first leg, it's always going to be a bit of a challenge to get back into it. But I don't think they helped themselves. The other thing... Oh, go ahead, Graham.
No, I was just going to come in on how good I thought Leon Goretzka was. So we talk about how Leverkusen last season sort of ran over the top of Bayern Munich in central midfield. And so I thought that was one of the big differences between the two teams was Goretzka. The number of times he covered for Kimmich in this game, there was a last-ditch tackle on Schick, and not a last-ditch tackle.
I mean, tummy tickles, and he missed his shot. Yeah,
Antonio Rudiger's definitely tried it on Haaland at some point. But basically, there was a couple of moments. There was another moment where he made a recovery run down the left side to win the ball back. And Seb Stafford-Bloor, who writes for The Athletic about German football, he said it really well. He said that Goretzka wins the little moments, and throughout this tie, Bayern just continually won those little moments until eventually they lead to a big moment, which is Bayern going through in this tie. So, Leverkusen maybe not quite as energetic, dynamic, intense, just aggressive, I guess, as we saw last season, but they kind of met a brick wall in the form of Leon Goretzka in the middle. And if you've seen him, there's not much between him and a brick wall.
One other player I wanted to spotlight in this one. Every now and then, Alphonso Davies seems to have moments where he's like, oh, right, I'm really, really, really good. And this was one of those games. For those games, we then have moments where he dribbles out of bounds or doesn't track his marker back or just makes questionable decisions. But he was electric in this game, not just because of the goal, but because of the way he would carry the ball and go directly at the Leverkusen defenders. And I think as the game goes on, they're collapsing more on him. They're trying to double team him, and I think it opens up space for other teammates around him. So I thought this was a really strong performance from Alphonso Davies, and those are always fun to see.
While we're spotlighting Bayern players, my key analysis on Jonas Urbig, the Bayern goalkeeper here. Firstly, "You are big" is a great name for a goalkeeper. That's very good indeed. But also,
that feels like a fake name. That feels like a FIFA. Really, you guys couldn't be more creative with this one. All right, fine.
But also, in terms of this being like a regen FIFA kind of thing, in Guardians of the Galaxy where Groot is injured and then he becomes a little baby Groot.
Yes.
Is he Manuel Neuer's baby Groot? He looks like he's just a little regen of him. Is that just me?
And he doesn't look 21 years old. He's got the frame of. There was a picture of the two of them side by side, and You're Big, or however you pronounce that, was bigger than Manuel Neuer. I thought he was really good in this game. I didn't think there was any real drop off between Manuel Neuer and Urbig, or however you're saying that. Part of that might have been down to Leverkusen's inability to actually create much in front of goal, but I thought his footwork was good when it needed to be. His distribution was solid, which is obviously a big part of what Neuer gives Bayern. And I think the hope is that one day he will be Neuer's successor. And he looks like a good bet to be that figure on this evidence.
In terms of footballing nominative determinism, and this is maybe also a portmanteau as well thrown in there, Kepa Yourbig, is that the best goalkeeper name we could possibly find if we combine Kepa Arrizabalaga with Jonas Urbig to make Keeper Yourbig? I feel like that's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, anything to combine Kepa Arrizabalaga with another goalkeeper, I think, is probably an improvement at this point. So, let's try it.
Ooh, okay, all right. He wouldn't be coming off if he was asked to be subbed by a Chelsea manager. Bayern Munich will be playing Inter Milan in the next round. Let's talk about Inter, shall we? They had a 2-1 win over Feyenoord, 4-1 on aggregate. Thuram and Çalhanoğlu with the goals. Inter pretty comfortably, Taylor, heading through in this one.
So much so that my talking point is me being annoyed by the penalty that they're given, because it is definitely a penalty by the rules of the laws of the game. But we had a question a while back, I think it was a listener question, about should the penalty box be smaller, basically. Does it need to be this big? Do we need to be giving penalties for infractions that occur 18 yards away from goal with players facing the opposite direction. And that is exactly what happens in this one. For people who haven't seen, in the 49th minute, it's Feyenoord trying to play short from a goal kick, which increasingly feels like a mistake. Right center back Thomas Bielan takes a heavy touch. He then goes to control. Before he can do so, Mehdi Taremi is running across him, basically. And as Taremi gets the ball, Bielan steps, makes contact with Taremi, and it initially looks like it is just outside the box. VAR shows the contact is just inside the penalty area. But even if Taremi wins it, it's a heavy touch, taking him away from goal at a full sprint. I think maybe Inter would have kept possession off of that one, but certainly it's not like he was in on goal and then that foul happened. So it's one of those where it is correctly given. We see that given as like if a player goes to clear and doesn't see the player running on and they kick the player before they kick the ball, it's going to be a penalty. Just in this case, with where it was and how much it was not going to be a goal-scoring opportunity, I do now wonder if maybe the penalty box should be like 6 yards smaller.
I saw very little of this match, but I did see this incident, Taylor, and it was one of those things that just makes you think, these rules are pointless. Like, there's no purpose to the rules of soccer, because there's just no way that is a fair punishment in that moment, that you get a 0.75 XG chance to score from that moment. But there's no arguing it. Like, he fouls him inside the box, but he's heading away from goal. Yeah, it's just stupid.
That's the thing. Is like, so I have no complaint with the decision, really, because it is a penalty by the rules of the game. It's just also, in any other situation, you see that and you'd be like, nah, that's not a penalty. Come on. This is silly. We don't need to be doing this. But here we are. I guess soccer is silly, ultimately.
Soccer is silly. And to avoid the existential dread of it just keeps going on and on. Let's carry on with this as well. Yeah,
we should, because you know what? You know how soccer really shows itself to be truly silly? Silly. Apparently, Marcus Rashford is now incredibly good and unplayable. When did that happen? Can we talk about that for a minute? How he's just now electric and switched on and can't be defended in any situation? Well done to Villa, but I'm not enjoying this timeline of Marcus Rashford, remembering that he is also good.
You want to talk about it's the Manchester United transfer paradigm at this point. Leave Manchester United, get good. Marcus Rashford's first, he'll be playing in his first Champions League quarterfinal for 6 years.
Thanks, Graham. Yeah. I'll say this, and I mean this genuinely. Frankie de Jong working so hard to not move to Manchester United is maybe the feather in his cap. It is the crowning achievement in his career that he worked so hard to not go to a place where he would have sunk into the mire, but instead stays at Barcelona, where he's, I guess, above the mire. But yeah, Rashford is another good example of apparently when you leave a toxic situation, things are less toxic for you. And his run in behind that leads to the red card in this game that I think was a difference maker in a tie that I already felt like was maybe a foregone conclusion, does sort of change things, and what does represent just how much more switched on he is, how much more up for things he seems to be than he's been previously. Yeah,
and that connection that he's got with Asensio, I think that's 5 goals they've combined for now. I don't think Rashford's actually scored a goal himself yet, but when his play is leading to goals for Villa, who cares, I guess. And they have a real link together, those two players. And I spoke about this last week, but Asensio's role in this team, just to switch the discussion to him, he's a finisher in this Aston Villa attack, which I find really interesting. He's sort of changed the dynamic of that Villa forward line, where a lot of the creativity is now coming out wide through Rashford or Jacob Ramsey, who is more of like a left-sided 10, but he's been playing out left since Asensio came in, or Liam Bailey from the right side. Previously for Villa, I felt like a lot of their creativity was coming centrally through players like Morgan Rogers and John McGinn and Yuri Tielemans, and obviously those players are still important for this team. But it has changed the dynamic of that forward line, because Asensio is taking up the goal-scoring positions to finish the chances, and we can see Unai Emery setting up the rest of his team to get the most out of those players, because he starts Ian Maatsen in this game. And the reason that he does that is because Marcus Rashford, when he's on the left side, he wants to keep the width out there, and you have Maatsen who can invert, so you keep the balance of your progression play there, whereas when it's Luka Dean and he wants to stay wide, he keeps the width from the fullback position, but then you've got Jacob Ramsey, who's a left-sided 10, he wants to come inside. So Unai Emery is in complete control of the options he has within this team. And the depth, I've mentioned this before with Villa, the depth that they have at this point is really impressive. And they've got PSG in the next round, which, look, PSG are going to be the favourites for that. I still anticipate a competitive tie over the two legs between those two teams, which says a lot about how far Aston Villa have come.
Yeah, definitely so. Just to clarify, a 6-1 aggregate win for Villa over Club Brugge after that 3-0 in this game on Wednesday. Taylor, just to come back to the Man United paradigm, you know the new Old Trafford? New Old Trafford? I'm not sure what we're calling it anymore. But the design of the stadium with those 2 points, those points on either side are to represent when a player is good, when they go to United in the middle, bad, back up to good. It's a graph. That's what they've drawn on their stadium. It's genius, really, when you think about it.
I don't love it that I can't really have any comeback for that because, that's actually accurate. Maybe that is what they represent these days. Thank you for that, Ryan.
Yeah, it's that or a circus tent or your insert joke here. Couple more games to look at. Dortmund are through with a 3-2 aggregate win over Lille with a comeback 2-1 win for them in this game on Wednesday. Jonathan David putting Lille up in this one, and then obviously Emre Can and Max Bayer with
Gregor Kobel putting Lille up in this one, getting megged on a gentle instep is maybe not what a goalkeeper wants to do. But yes, it is Jonathan David who takes it. It is credit in my mind to Niko Kovac, who I think inspires the fight back from Dortmund. If they get the result, they advance out of this one. Dortmund under Kovac so far, he's had 9 games since taking over in early February. 3 losses in that time. Should be noted, 2 of those losses were in his first 3 games. So if you remove those, in his 6 most recent, 3 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss, gets past Sporting in the Champions League, now gets past Lille. They have a brutal run of fixtures coming up. They've got Leipzig on the road. Their next 7 would be Leipzig on the road, who are 6th on 39 points. Then they're home to Mainz, at Freiburg, at Barcelona, at Bayern, home to Barcelona, home to Gladbach. Every single one of those Bundesliga teams is ahead of them in the table. Barcelona ahead of them in other ways. But if they are able to get points to pick up results along the way, this could be the stretch in which Dortmund close the gap, maybe get back into some form of European places. It could also be where their season falls off spectacularly. So we shall see, but Niko Kovac, I think, has done a good job of sort of bandaging a trauma situation as best he could.
Yeah, we shall see there. Yeah, Dortmund playing Barcelona, as you mentioned, in the next round. That is a tricky one. But hey, maybe in that run of games, Taylor, Girona gets 5 minutes like he did here. So,
woo!
Yeah, cool. Great. There's that. All right.
We're gonna win the World Cup.
Yeah, that's
those 5 minutes are going to make the difference.
Did you see, by the way, I don't want to evoke his name, but the man in the office when Gianni Infantino was with him with the Club World Cup trophy, asking if the USA could win it? That was cool.
I thought you were talking about Michael Scott.
How much did Infantino lie?
Infantino gently glided past that question, I believe. Very delicate diplomat that he is. One more game to talk about from...
Bunch of losers. Is that what he said about our national team? I feel like that's probably what he said about our national team.
Maybe. Well, or the sworn enemy co-host as well. But let's get into that at another time. Arsenal 2, PSV 2. One more game to talk about here. A 9-3 aggregate win for Arsenal, Graham. 7 changes from the weekend for Arsenal. Pretty wholesale changes. Lots of empty seats at the Emirates for this one. 4 left-backs on the field for Arsenal when they finished this game as well. That was
one of them was Tierney, who was playing as a left winger in this game. Yeah, the hard work was already done from the first leg when Arsenal thumped PSV, and so they could sort of coast through the second leg. Still interesting to see, as you say, Ryan, this lineup and a front 3 of Kieran Tierney, Mikel Merino and Raheem Sterling for a Champions League knockout match.
Wow.
Not sure I envisaged that. There were 3 left backs in the Arsenal lineup, and then they brought on Calafiore, and then who was the 5th one? I can't even recall who the 5th. Oh, Kivior, right? Is that who we're counting as the 5th one? Yeah, a lot of left backs in this lineup. It was a vibesy match where you could sort of sense the lack of competitive tension. Seemed quite quiet at the Emirates, and because Arsenal made so many changes, they were quite disjointed and lacked cohesion. But just very quickly, Raheem Sterling's performance, I thought, was worth highlighting because he was great. He was getting out to the touchline, isolating defenders one-on-one, driving forward at pace. It was the Raheem Sterling of old for one night only. So then the question is, why have we not seen more of this player this season when Arsenal have been so lacking? I mean, at the weekend there against Manchester United, they started Mikel Merino at centre forward. They're bringing on Kieran Tierney as a left winger. Raheem Sterling, I don't think, gets off the bench. So I do wonder why he's been overlooked. Because when you see him play like this, clearly he has something at least to offer.
Yeah, I like to think it was his perceived lack of willingness to put in a leg-breaking challenge when he absolutely didn't need to, and then he rectified that in this game because it looked for all the world like he was getting sent off for that challenge on Johan Bakayoko, and maybe Sterling should have, but he only picks up the yellow for out of control, 2-foot sliding into a player's legs when the player doesn't see them coming. That felt aggressive in a game that was already quite done.
So that's where I don't understand the rules of soccer, Taylor, because why was that not a red card for him at the end of that game? I don't know. But it was a good game for him. Otherwise, 2 assists, as Graham notes. But we shall see. My favourite thing, by the way, PSV playing for pride here. 2 really good goals from them, and the fans were on form. My favourite thing about this game happened the night before. The PSG Ultras, who were in town in London, they went to a game on Tuesday night. Graham, did you see where they went?
They went to Plough Lane. I saw this.
They went to Plough Lane. They sat behind the goal for Wimbledon's loss to Cheltenham on Tuesday night. My brother was there. His report was that they were very, very drunk, but in very good spirits and very loud, the PSV fans who came along to that game. So, bully for them. Very good.
Did they bring the megaphone that the PSG fans, I know we're talking about 2 different clubs here, but did anyone spot the megaphone that the PSG Ultra had behind the goal for the shootout? I'd never seen that before.
It's good.
So let's hope the PSG
you want to win
fans
that toss.
also had that.
You want to win that toss if you guys have got a megaphone behind the goal, is the moral of this round of the Champions League, I think. One more note, of course, Arsenal, as noted, will play Real Madrid in the next round. And that, Taylor Rockwell, is our Champions League round of 16 roundup. On to the quarters we go. Yay.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the next round. I'm excited for the teams that made it there. I'm excited to continue to talk about those games with you all.
Likewise, pal. And we'll have plenty more coming on the feed, Champions League and otherwise. But for now, Taylor Rockwell, once again, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. It must be surreal to be a Villa fan, to go from playing in the Championship a few years ago to now a Champions League quarterfinal matchup against PSG. That's not bad. That's not a bad life.
Unless you're an old Villa fan, and you had that back in the early 80s as well, of course. Back before soccer was invented by Rupert Murdoch.
Yes, back in the 80s, which Joe considers to be virtually dead.
It's like in a history book for him. Graham Ruthven, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Ryan Bailey. I was trying to think, there must be Villa players who... I think John McGinn's debut was against like Plymouth Argyle or something in the Championship, so he's come a long way. Yeah, there's got to be a couple others in that Villa team that have had that journey.
The Wayne Rooney Stackboy doing it again. Wayne Rooney inspired this comeback for Villa.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. 5 degrees of Rooney separation for everybody. Listener, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this one. We'll be back on the feed very shortly indeed. But for now, bye!